Fractal Analytics was talking about AI before anyone knew what AI was. It services hundreds of Fortune 500 companies, yet there is very little known in the public space about Fractal and its founder, Shrikant Velamakani, who is my guest this week on The Disruptor. Shrikant, so great to have you on. Thank you for coming in.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. All right. So for those who are not really clued into what Fractal does, let's start right there. Why is Fractal a big deal? Why is Fractal a disruptor in its space?
So Fractal powers decisions in enterprises. Just imagine you and I as ordinary people make maybe a couple of hundred decisions every day, from every morning when we wake up, what to wear, how to go to work, or what to eat. We make these decisions. Many of them are conscious decisions, some are unconscious. So think of enterprises. They make millions of decisions. What should be the price of a product? How should I market it? Who should sell it? How should we sell it? What should be the campaigns? All of that stuff, right? Each of these decisions can be powered by algorithms, machines that can figure out what is the optimal price to sell, or what are the best marketing budgets to have, or which channels to advertise in. These are the kinds of decisions that are increasingly being made by algorithms. And Fractal powers these algorithms that help companies become better at what they do, more effective at what they do, increase their productivity, become more customer friendly, and so on. And now with the progress in AI, these are becoming extraordinarily powerful in driving a competitive advantage for companies. So Fractal is a big deal because we are really powering the entire Fortune 500 ecosystem in getting better, being more productive, more employee-centric, more customer-centric.
Okay, so to put it simply, you are the guys telling large companies how to use AI to sell better.
Sell better for sure. Also, how to be more productive. For example, how do I increase my revenue per employee or my employee productivity? How do I plan my supply chain that I don't have a stock out, nor do I have excess inventory in something? How do I make a day-to-day decisions on price, promotions, etc. in order to sell better? I can do it with data, with AI, with algorithms, and that's really what we're helping them do.
Okay, so now tell us about the journey, Shrikant, because you have been an earlier adopter of AI. Right now, we're in a world where everything is powered by AI. I think half the time there's an AI label stuck on stuff which has already existed. And we'll talk in a bit about, as genuine AI operationality we're seeing there and what's not. But tell us about the journey and how you came into this space. Of course, after being a banker, an investment banker, how all of this began for you.
It all began with my interest in math. I'm always a good student of math, and from the part of India that I was born in, I was expected to be a math Greek.
Which is that?
Which is Andhra Pradesh.
Okay.
I grew up in Assam, Orissa, and Rajasthan, but there's this upbringing which meant that getting 98 on a math test was considered poor performance.
Oh dear. So, one minute. So if you got 98 on 100, you would expect to be chided.
You obviously made some mistake, so you got lost to 2 points, so obviously you did something wrong, and that is not okay. So I grew up in that atmosphere, and I was very interested in math. So as I was growing up, I thought engineering is the best place to use math. So I went into engineering college, and during the engineering days, it just struck me that I was more interested in something else, which was human behavior. Yes, you might be thinking, what does somebody do in an engineering college studying human behavior? So we had humanities courses. One of them was called psychology. And during that period, I read a textbook. It was called Morgan King. It was 700 pages long. And it was mind-blowing. Oh, this is the way to understand human behavior. The most complex of all things is how humans really behave. And once I started to learn that topic, I thought that I have to do something in life which involved math and human behavior. Now, I didn't know what it was. Like Steve Jobs says, you can only connect the dots looking backward. I was doing this stuff. And as I was I thought first, let me do banking because that's where math is used. And I realized very early on that I was not having that much fun doing banking. So then when we started Fractal and we struggled a little bit in the first 6 months figuring out what to do, we said, let's go back to what are the basics, math and human behavior. And we said, what if we can use math to predict human behavior? So first thing we did was we went to a bank. This was ICICI Bank. And we told them, look, you want to build a huge empire in retail lending. They had just started retail lending.
And this is the year 2000.
This is the year 2000. KV Kamath, I remember because I worked for ICICI, I remember making a presentation to KV Kamath along with Shikha, who was the head of personal financial services. And we had a plan, very aggressive plan of doing some 1,000 crores in the first year or something like that. KVK looked at it and said, I'm not interested in this. If you're not doing 10,000 crores in the first year, this is waste of my time. And everyone was going back and thinking, okay, how do we build a 10,000 crore empire in 1 year? So this was the environment. So when I quit ICICI, started Fractal, and we struggled after the struggle, we said, what if we help ICICI in doing lending better? What if I use data that the bank has in order to predict who's going to pay their loans and who's going to default on their loans? Maybe math can be helpful. Data can be helpful. So, and we can study human behavior through their data.
So what are you calling it at this point? Because artificial intelligence at that point is not yet in common parlance.
That's right.
So what are you calling it when you're going out and pitching, say to an ICICI bank or other banks at that point? What are you calling this?
We called it analytics. It was a hard one to explain to people what is analytics, because everything is analysis, but what is analytics? So we said it is predictive analytics. Okay, and then we said it is called statistical scorecards. So we said we'll build a scorecard. So that takes the data and gives you a probability that somebody is going to pay their loan or not pay that loan. And using that, if the probability of default is high, don't lend to them. If the probability of default is low, lend to them. So that was the philosophy. So we called it predictive analytics. ICICI being, always experimental with new stuff, they said, okay, build the first statistical scorecard in India. So
did you get to pitch to KVK?
And no, not KVK was not required for this. It was just 1 or 2 levels below that. But Shikha and her team, and there was a gentleman called Jairam who runs now Piramal Housing Finance. So he was the guy who was running this project. So he said, we'll give it to you. So we did that, and it was so exciting because we could see the data and we could find out, okay, these kinds of people are likely to default at this rate. To know that data can be used to infer human behavior or predict human behavior was intoxicating. The next one I'll tell you, which was very interesting, was the work we did with Unilever. So I worked with Dr. Siddharth Roy. He was the chief economist of Unilever at that time. Now, Hindustan Lever at that time is such an important company in India. I don't know if people know about it or not, but they make everything. So what we were doing was to use, Unilever had a panel it was called Repeat Buyer Survey. They would have special waste paper baskets in homes. And after you take out any wrapper of any product, you're supposed to dump it in that trash can. And Unilever people will come and take that wrapper away and they document it. Okay.
So they'll analyze your trash to see what your consumption habits are.
What did you buy and what did you consume? And it was mind-blowing to know that during a recessionary period of 2001, people, for example, if you were buying expensive product like surf, you were downgrading yourself to something like a ghadi, which was a cheaper product. Or if you're buying, let's say Starbucks, you're drinking a Starbucks coffee every day. Now you might reduce the frequency to every week because you can't afford to buy it every day anymore. If I can use data to understand human behavior, this is cool.
So let me interject here with a fundamental question which even now applies to AI and how we see it evolving, which is the question of bias in those developing those programs. Because something that you said earlier caught my attention when you talked about ICICI, where we could figure out which kind of people would default and which kind would not. How do you make that distinction? And was that a problem that you had to solve earlier on? How you could ensure that the data does not get, contaminated by individual bias or individual thought?
It's a very insightful point because lending is a matter of fairness as well. You have to be fair in lending. And banks back in the day used to have policies like, we will not lend to lawyers, we will not lend to this areas of the city. Yeah. So profession-based, areas of the city-based, they would not lend because they had this experience saying that, okay, it's not working out for me, I have more defaults there. And it is, frankly, these things have become outlawed in many countries. India, which was probably allowed back then. What we were doing was to move them from that sort of thinking to data-driven thinking. We would say, okay, the data suggests that this profile of a person has this likelihood of default. And we would also do one more thing, which is very interesting. It's slightly technically complicated. We would infer about the people who we have not lent to. So if you have a policy of not lending to a certain people, you don't know how they would perform if you were to lend to them. So we had mathematical ways of even helping the banks figure that out, which is called reject inference. So doing some of that helped us de-bias the system to a certain extent. So if a loan officer gets up one morning and he or she has a fight with their spouse, they come to office and they're grumpy, they're rejecting all loan applications. Whereas an AI system is not going to be grumpy on any given day. It's going to be the same consistent self. So there were some advantages of machine-driven thing. It's more consistent, higher quality, higher predictive power. And that's why ICSA started moving to scorecards back as early as 2001.
So let me talk a bit about 2000, the founding five. There were five founders, right? So who are these people? How did all of you come together and what's the story there? And then, of course, I'll come to the episode in 2007 when the split took place.
So as growing up, I did not want to be an entrepreneur. And some things happened because of which I changed my mind. And suddenly I was thinking, I'll be an entrepreneur. There was a lot of entrepreneurship in the air, so to speak, around .com time. Many entrepreneurs were coming through. So one fine day, on August 15th, 1999, I remember Independence Day, I made this bold announcement to my friend that I'm quitting. By December 31st, I'll quit and I'll start something. I had no idea what we will start. But I had moved in my head that I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
What was the trigger?
I think there were two triggers. One was my meeting with Narayan Murthy in 97. He came to our business school. And he was running a small company called Infosys, tiny company at that time. But he was talking about how you can be ethical and be an entrepreneur. Growing up, I felt that businessmen are generally corrupt, so I didn't want to be a businessman. The second thing was to look at peers, friends of mine, starting companies. I felt like, you know what, people like me are able to raise capital. And I always felt that, I don't have any capital background, so I won't be able to start. Now seeing those two things, it sort of clicked in my head that this is the right time to be an entrepreneur. And then I looked for a few people who I can start with. First thing, one of my friends, a classmate in business school was Nirmal. He was always very keen to start a company. So I went to him and I said, you know what, shall we partner? Shall we do something? Then Nirmal said, let me get my best friend. So he got two of his best friends, Pradeep and RK. And I got my best friend, which was Pranay. So five of us came together and we brainstormed and the sixth guy joined and then we all started in 2000. And slowly that team has shrunk to two. And for the last 15 years, two of us have been running Fractal.
So that is actually the journey of a lot of companies, that you start one way and then you evolve and you morph. But the 2007 split was a tough one, wasn't it?
So we were six of us who started. One person left right away in the first year. Then five of us ran the company for about 7 years, six and a half, 7 years. By 2007, differences were emerging. Part of this is because we are starting to become very successful, somewhat successful. So success always creates more problems than failure. That's my experience. The second thing that happened was that we all started to live in different parts of the world. So once we realized that the US markets and the Asian markets were better for our growth than India, then we sent two people to be in the US. That was me and Pranay. We sent two to Singapore to run the Asia markets, Pradeep and Nirmal, and RK was running it in India. Now, this was pre-Skype days and video calls and Zoom days, etc. So we used to have these teleconference calls, very expensive. Getting alignment with each other was hard. We were 5 equals, which is a big challenge. So the investors said, you guys should elect a CEO. We said, yeah, sure, we'll elect a CEO. We all went and met in London, a neutral location. We were trying to get a neutral location. We booked a big hotel and a bunch of conference rooms, and we said, we'll spend a full week, we'll figure out what to do with Fractal. So we got together, we had an election. Pranay and I, the two of us who were in America, we both contested the election. And the other three, we're going to decide who to choose.
Okay, so it was a toss-up between both of you.
Both of us. At the end of the process, which was a day long, and white smoke came out of the chimneys, then they announced that, Srikanth, we have selected you unanimously as the CEO. And I was thinking, okay, is Pranay going to be upset? But Pranay, we have a great friendship throughout our history. So Pranay was like, yeah, this is good. I think you'll be a great CEO. So we got back to our respective locations, and then hell broke loose. Because, I was not really an effective CEO, just to be very candid. When I look back, maybe I was not running it as effectively. Maybe I wanted to take charge of it too quickly. They were not used to this. My ego came in the way. Net, a year later, the 3 people who selected me as a CEO said, we don't want any CEO. Let's go back to the previous way of working. And that didn't work out, and things went from bad to worse. And then two of them quit. And then after that, we had a year and a half of great disturbance. AI was doing, I think analytics and AI were picking up, but we were in a very bad place. So by the time we all got done, it was 2010. So 2.5, 3 years of my life we lost. And by 2010, I think once we settled everything, I apologized to all of them and settled everything. And we were ready to grow to the next level.
Yeah, first of all, Shrikant, I want to compliment you on being so candid and talking about lessons you've learned. And I want to take this back to what you said in the beginning. What changed things in your mind, your psychology class, and the book you read. What do you think you learned about yourself?
See, I have been very focused on self-growth throughout my life. Read about 100 books a year, sometime nowadays maybe 150 books a year, and always try to implement something in my life, always believe in feedback. So always asking people for feedback. I realized that my ego is my biggest bottleneck. And entrepreneurship is an ego crushing experience because when you start a business, you feel like I'll be everybody's boss, and you realize that everybody is my boss, including my landlord and my employees and my team members and my
And your
investors, even your spouse, everyone, right? Everyone's telling you're wasting your time. You should do something else with yourself. And you're telling them, no, it's all going to work out. I have a plan. Whether or not you have a plan, you're telling everyone that I have a plan. So that's a job of an entrepreneur. You convince the whole world that whatever she or he is doing is good and should believe in them. So I was doing that. And this was anyway sort of getting my ego in check. But once success started coming and I was elected the CEO, maybe I behaved in a way that was, when I look back, maybe I could have done something better.
I think quotable quote over here, entrepreneur thinks he's the boss, but actually everyone's his boss at the end of the day. Let's talk a bit about AI now, because that's where we are. That's what the world is awakening and listening. And two schools of thought. One, that AI is evil. It will inevitably lead to the destruction of the human race. I had an interview with Yuval Noah Harari, and I think you're very familiar with his views over there. And he knows that he believes this is the end of the world. Where are you on that spectrum?
AI is the most important general purpose technology ever. Like steam, electricity, AI, like internet, AI. It is huge general purpose technology. And everything that's general purpose as science itself. I remember when I was growing up, we used to have debates in school, science is a boon or science is a bane. I hope no one is talking about that anymore because you can use science to do bad things. Similarly, you can use AI to do bad things. So bad actors using AI to, let's say, do cyber attacks or to steal your passwords or steal your money, or bad actors using you to manipulate you, doing fake videos, this is going to happen. Better AI will come and attack those bad actors and also detect those deep fakes, detect those cyber security issues and so on. So I think that will work out just fine. It's when AI gets out of control, even the good actors use it unintentionally for bad reasons, or AI gets out of control. These are the two scenarios we must protect against.
So, what do you say to the doomsday conspiracy theories that there will be a point where artificial intelligence will gain superiority over humans and then that's the end game?
This point in the world is called singularity. And we may be 3 to 5 years away from a place where we have AGI or singularity, that AI is getting so good that it will beat human beings at everything.
Just 3 to 5 years?
3 to 5 years. And the question is, if we have an intelligence, form of intelligence that is significantly superior to the current human intelligence, what is the chances that that superior intelligence will listen to us? Now, this makes the assumption that these higher intelligence forms have their own needs and aspirations and goals, and they will supersede our own goals. So the idea of all the AI research that's happening around safety is to create a system by which AI will never have those kinds of goals that are superior to human goals.
But examples are being seen. I mean, you see them every day cited in, reports about AI exceeding the brief, so to speak. What do you make of those?
So one of those is AI lying, right? Now we have insight into how AI thinks. Now these reasoning models, you can have a peek into the mind of the AI. It sort of shares with you what it is thinking before answering a question. And when you see that thinking, it makes some decision that, okay, if I say this, he is not going to like it, let me say this, which may not be true. So it is beginning to lie. But then realize that human beings also lie. In fact, developmentally, human beings start lying at the age of about 4. And I was very concerned. For the first time, I felt like my daughter is going to lie or has just lied. And then I read up a little bit. I realized that lying is a developmental milestone. So AI will, as AI gets better, it will have the ability to lie. The key thing is, can we align AI's values to fundamentally human values? It is not easy, but it is the topic of the research. Now, AI can produce incredible breakthroughs in the world in terms of productivity, in terms of healthcare outcomes, educational outcomes, just making our lives easier. It will do a lot.
Well, look what we're doing with it right now, writing emails on LLMs, making fake videos, making memes. I mean, look at what we're using AI for. Of course, a lot happening, and of course, selling better.
Exactly. Think of healthcare. Today, for example, Fractal has a business called Cure.ai, spelled with a Q. And Cure.ai is doing the work of the radiologist. And it's already touched 25 million lives. It detects tuberculosis on an X-ray. It detects COVID on an X-ray. It detects lung cancer. So take lung cancer as an example. Cure is working with AstraZeneca, which is a large pharma company, in identifying lung cancer early. Lung cancer is a disease where if it is identified early, there's a 70 to 80% chance of recovery. But if it's identified late, the chance of recovery comes down to 7 or 8%. So it's a 10x difference. So if I can have an AI system that's surveying the world and detecting lung cancer early, I will save literally millions of lives.
But
They're not enough.
are you putting out radiologists out of business?
It is actually augmenting radiologists, number one, and it is putting AI radiologists when radiologists don't exist. So think of a country where there's only one radiologist. There are countries where there's only one radiologist for the whole country. India needs probably 10x the radiologists that it has today. So in such situations, what it does is it does the job of the radiologist when radiologist is absent. An example is Philippines. We have our vans going around the country of Philippines, identifying who has TB. TB is a big problem in the Philippines too. Earlier, these scans used to go to the headquarters, and then the doctor would look at it like 4 weeks or 6 weeks later, and then try to find the patient. And patients will be lost to follow up. So what we do is to put those patients on drug therapy right then and there, because in a mobile van. That is the possibilities of AI. So AI will create incredible life outcomes for the world.
And in terms of jobs, the big jobs question, for example, the number of people you hire today, in 5 years, would you need the same number of people?
It's a good question. If you take a status quo and say that, okay, there's a finite quantity of work, and we have these many people. For the same quantity of work, we'll need only half the people, or maybe a third of the people. But work expands because it's linked to human imagination.
Not at the same pace.
It can sometimes be even higher pace. Just think about 250 years ago, there were these people called Luddites who were going to factory floors and saying, do not bring in machines. But 200 years later, the world is in a very different place. We have mechanized, created technologies, various kinds of things which has made life better. So progress is on that direction, which means that we will have to use more AI. And when you start using more AI and automate bunch of jobs, human beings being creative, imagine what's next, the next big thing. And in that, we start employing people again. So this has happened for 300 years in a very predictable way.
So there is going to be one stage of disruption.
Yes.
Before things settle down.
Yes.
How large will be that stage of disruption, job disruption because of AI?
It could be 5 to 10 years, which means that someone could go through a whole career and disrupt it. So it is not easy. So we have, as societies, as countries, we have to come up with systems to manage this situation. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Think of a 50-year-old truck driver, right? Let's say I'm doing long-haul truck driving from the west coast of the United States to the east coast of the United States. There are large, big highways. I'm driving and I'm making $100,000 a year. A good job, decent job. Now, this job is going to not exist. Now, AI is going to do the most of the driving. And now this truck driver has to figure out, what should I do with my career? What should I learn? Can I become a drone pilot? Can I become something else? It's not easy at 50 to relearn something and get a new job and so on. So there could be some disruptions. The question really is, do we have a choice? the economic incentive of using AI to make progress is so strong that companies are going to say, look, I'm going to use AI instead of using something else. And yet there's one more thing, which is about human outcomes. Think of accidents. Today in India, 1.5 lakh people die every year because of road accidents. In the US, 35,000 people die every year because of road accidents. Now, if we have AI-driven vehicles, we can eliminate that loss.
So then who foots the bill, or who takes care of those who get disrupted? In your view, is that society? Are those governments? Does there need to be a plan hand in hand to minimize that disruption? Or is it something that we as humanity will have to go through?
We as humanity and all the various elements of humanity, whether it's companies, countries, governments, state governments, local governments, all of us have to come together and say, we have to protect people. Protecting jobs is passé. It's not possible. We can protect people. And we have to create, reskilling people so that they can learn new stuff, giving them temporary support. I have this concept that everyone in the world has to become a serial expert. And everyone has to stop thinking of 50-year careers as a given. It's not there anyway. People are anyway moving. Now you have to think of a career as a 5-year intervals. You do 5 or 6 or 7 of those over the next 30 years. And there's no need for us to work 40 hours a week either. That is just an artifact of the Industrial Revolution. There's no reason that maybe 3 hours is good enough, maybe 5 hours is good enough.
How many hours do you work a week?
I'm working 60 hours a week. And I've been working maybe 60 to 80 hours a week for the last 25 years.
60 to 80 hours,
Yes.
huh? Do you think AI can do your job?
I think several aspects of it, it should do my job, and it will free my time to do what is next for, let's say, Fractal or for the world at large. So that, I think, I'll welcome that.
Yeah. Interesting, interesting. Thank you so much, Shrikant. This has been a fascinating conversation. Absolute pleasure, Shrikant, to have you on The Disruptors.